So The Conjuring really has been the main flagship horror franchise of the 2010s, and Annabelle is the only one within this franchise to have gained an entire trilogy. And lately I've been making my way through the Conjuring franchise. I hadn't really seen them all leading up to this point, but recently I've been getting through them all. Finished Annabelle Comes Home the other day, which means I capped off the Annabelle trilogy, which also means it is the perfect time to rank all three of the Annabelle movies. And the Annabelle franchise itself, it's kind of a weird franchise. In a way, like, watching the first Conjuring and seeing the Annabelle doll, it kind of leads you to wonder, what is that, wanting to see more. Then they do the spin-off the year later, which Annabelle, it doesn't really answer a lot of questions. And then a following, I think it was 3 years later, they do Annabelle Creation, which it's kind of a weird way, the second one in this franchise of the Annabelle movies, to make it a kind of a prequel, which you would have thought maybe the prequel of how the doll was made would have happened in the first Annabelle spin-off, and then the third one follows kind of how the Warrens got the doll and kind of goes on from there, which in a way it's a weird way of telling the Annabelle story, kind of a bit out of continuity, where it's a bit odd. Maybe if you switch around the first two around, it might have made a bit more sense. But anyways, here are the Rotten Tomato score for these movies. Coming in last place, we do have Annabelle, which is the original Annabelle, coming in at 29%. Following that up, we got Annabelle Comes Home with 65%. And then coming in first place, we have Annabelle Creation with 71%. And then one last quick thing before I do get started with my ranking of the Annabelle movies. Make sure you let me know your ranking of the Annabelle movies in the comments down below. Let me know in general if you're a fan of this kind of franchise of the Annabelle spin-off movies of The Conjuring in general. But anyways, with all that said, let's go on to number 3. And probably surprising no one, I do have the original Annabelle coming in at third place. This movie, I just found it to be really, really boring. You kind of got the cliche, the family move into a house, the house is a little bit haunted, so then they move, which it's not really that formula, but it's very similar to that. The only really good thing about this movie, well, there's two good things. I like the mother, like the main female lead. I actually kind of liked her in this movie. Her husband wasn't really a massive fan of her. You got this few side characters throughout it. Again, wasn't really a massive fan of it, but her herself, I actually enjoyed her character as well. Another kind of main kind of element of this movie I really enjoyed was the opening scene when we see the people who are getting murdered in the next door neighbors, and she wakes up and then the whole sequence plays out. That whole sequence, I actually kind of found that enjoyable, and it kind of reminded me, like, I'd heard this movie wasn't that good going into it, but coming off The Conjuring and then going into Annabelle, I was thinking, oh, well, maybe this movie is good. After seeing that opening sequence, later on I found out it wasn't good, but that opening sequence alone in this movie I thought was really good. Other than that though, the movie kind of plays out a lot where, oh, something is moving in the background, or the doll has just moved places, or her head is slightly moved. A lot of it, it's just kind of cliche. It's a very cheap movie. It feels like they kind of scraped the bottom of the barrel for this, use all the generic kind of stuff instead of doing anything new. As well, even though it came out a year later, I don't know if it was like more than a year later, as if like The Conjuring came out in like February of 2013 and then Annabelle came out in November of 2014, or if it was less time than that. But it's just, this movie itself, it feels very rushed, and it feels like they just kind of wanted to rush this movie out, not knowing what to do, but they want to capitalize on The Conjuring, and they just want to do anything they could just to get a new movie out there as soon as possible. That's really how I could really summarize this movie. It's a really rushed movie. And coming in number 2, I do have Annabelle Comes Home. This movie as well, in a way, there's loads of it I liked, a lot of it I didn't. A lot of the horror for this movie does 100% rely on the fact that it's a lot of jump scares. Like, you can kind of see when a lot of horror was coming out, but a lot of the horror as well was from all these like kind of demons. But because they had a lot of demons, it kind of felt like saying, okay, can this be another spin-off, or can this be another spin-off? Like, there's this bride in the kind of in this movie that I really, honest to God, I don't know if anything's been announced, but I would not be surprised if they announce that they're going to do a spin-off with that bride, because there's just so many kind of other horror icons within this movie that they could completely make spin-offs for. I really wouldn't be surprised. Annabelle herself in this movie, she's okay. Nothing. She's not like she is in Annabelle Creation. She's still scary in parts, but other than that, not really. It's a very cliche kind of horror movie. I know I said that about the one before, but this one, it has the babysitter, and it has like the whole way of like the babysitter, the house gets haunted and they kind of panic. You kind of see that in a good amount of horror movies as well. The boyfriend in this movie, he kind of feels very shoehorned in. He kind of felt like, okay, we need someone maybe to be on the outside, or we need another character. We put a boyfriend character in. That's what it kind of felt like for me as the movie was playing out. But some of the great things about this movie was, I really liked the Warren's daughter in this movie. She felt like, I liked how she knew everything. I like how she didn't kind of whimper off in the corner. I knew that she knew, okay, we need to do this, or this is what happens when such and such happens. I like that she was able to understand all this because of who her parents were. And of course, we get to see the Warrens in this movie. That was the first time we actually got to see them outside of a Conjuring movie. And the Warrens themselves, I actually really enjoyed their characters. Just the two of them, the relationship they have, they seem so realistic, they seem so real. And just the way the two actors who play, it's Patrick Wilson, and I don't know the actress's name, but the way they play it, I'm a really massive fan of the Warrens characters in general. So the fact that we got to see them within this movie itself, I enjoyed that as well. The ending of this movie, really, I was surprised how well this ending ended for me. It's a really happy ending. Like, it's not like a big ending the way we've seen in Annabelle Creations, when we actually see the kind of ending to or we get to see the beginning of Annabelle. In this movie, we see them actually having a party with a little girl. Throughout the movie itself, like, no one wants to hang out with her, no one wants to come to her birthday party because of who her parents are. At the end, we actually get to see a birthday party with a little girl when everyone comes. Just that ending alone, it made the movie for me. I think just see the ending that everyone works out for her in the end. I don't know why, it just really worked for me. And coming in number one, I do have Annabelle Creation. This movie, it worked on all levels for me. Didn't really know anything about this one. I kind of went in, all I knew about this was it was the sequel to Annabelle. So I was going in thinking, okay, will this be as good or will it be bad? And they just kind of made it because they made a lot of money. But surprisingly, this movie is really good. The creepy atmosphere of having it on a farmhouse with all this mystery plays out really well. And this movie does something that both Annabelle and The Conjuring in a way could not do, which was make the doll creepy for me. In Annabelle, really didn't do anything. In The Conjuring, it just kind of sets it up like, what the hell is that doll? But then in Annabelle Creation, it brings it all home and it makes it such a horrific doll. Even it continues on then within Annabelle Comes Home in making it a creepy doll, and it makes it one of those dolls that you wouldn't want to be locked in the room. Like, I've seen this doll in Forbidden Planet. I'm like, you know what? I'm never gonna buy that doll. Just the idea of how creepy it is. There's so many sequences in this movie I just find horrific and horrible to watch. Like the scene when the man, I don't know the actor's name or anything, but when he gets his finger snapped, I actually had to look away when the sequence was happening because it just felt so graphic, so real, and it disgusted me in a way that I could not watch that scene at all. But the story itself, I really enjoyed. This setup to see how this doll was made, and it's a way I never expected it to be set up. It's not how I was expecting to see the doll set up as well. You got the young girl. Well, there's two main young girls in this movie, and they're both like they never get on your nerves. Like, if you watch horror movies, sometimes like The Turning from this year, not Finn Wolfhard, but the little girl in this movie who looks around roughly the same age as the two girls in Annabelle Creation. I found that girl got really irritating after a while, but the two main girls in this movie never got irritating to me, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised by how good they were, and I really would not mind seeing these two young girls anything else in the coming up future. Maybe, I don't know, they might be other stuff, I don't know. But as well, one of my favourite things about this movie was the ending and how brilliantly it went into Annabelle. It kind of made Annabelle a small bit better by seeing the ending. As soon as like the woman, you see the people get killed in the house, and then the woman who are main lead in Annabelle pops up, like, okay, I like how that movie ends. I wasn't expecting to see it end like that. Honestly, that was like the furthest thing. Did not think whatsoever the movie was going to end like that. But as soon as it ended like that, it just put the biggest grin on my face just to see how well this movie ended. So that's my ranking of all 3 Annabelle movies. I will be doing a ranking of all 7 of the Conjuring movies in the next future, probably 2-3 weeks. I just have to watch through The Curse of La Llorona, which I haven't seen, and I want to rewatch The Nun because it's been over a year since I've seen that, so I do want to rewatch that and get my kind of memory fresh. And I remember not liking it, but I want to remember why I didn't like it. So I will be doing a ranking of all 7 Conjuring movies in the future. So if you want to see that ranking in the future, click that subscribe button so you can come back whenever I do that ranking, and hopefully it will be sooner rather than later. So if you do want to see that, make sure you do click that subscribe button. And as always, thanks for watching.
I like your dolls.